the UK Psych Health and Safety and ISO 45003 podcast.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the UK Psych Health and Safety podcast. I'm Sheila Lord and my co-host today is, as usual, the lovely Peter Kelly, UK HSE. And we are joined today by Vince Butler, who is a keen health and safety activist from RSVP Safety Systems. Now, Vince has worked in health and safety for 30 plus years, and he's got a lot of experience around 45001, the management systems. And today we're going to be talking to Vince about the kind of the health and safety basics, 45001 and 003. His thoughts on psychological health and safety, and if we can get to it in the 40-minute slot that we've got, the roles that unions can play in supporting psychological health and safety in the workplace. So over to Vince. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background, Vince, what you've been doing, and we'll get straight into the 5 health and safety basics that you like to cover?
Okay, thank you, Sheila, and hello, Peter. I've been a working person now for nearly 50 years, and I started at age 16 in a mining apprenticeship in the Durham coalfield. I worked for 20 years underground in the mines out under the North Sea, off the east coast of Durham. Most of that time was actually at the coalface, doing various jobs from machine operator and transport work. I was a mine deputy, shot firer, overman, safety officer, and finished my career in the mid-90s as a mine under manager. A great education background, development in the old Coal Board and British Coal's management development training schemes. Did excellent work with electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, mining engineering, surveying, and a bit of law in there. So it was a great kind of basis and a background to come into safety. So when all the coal mines closed in the northeast through the late 80s and early 90s, I moved across from mining engineering and did coal mining into occupational health and safety management, and I came down to work with a contracting division of Southern Electricity Board at the time, Southern Electric Contracting. That organisation kind of grew to about 4,000 people, about 2,500 electricians mostly, craft tradies, electricians, working in every conceivable type of building, premises, workplace, business type, all the different sectors in the UK. Between moving from British Coal onto Southern Electric Contracting, British Coal sent me off and I did my NEBOSH diploma. And got qualified over a year there, which kind of gave me the credentials, as it were, to move across into health and safety management as a professional person. I did lots of health and safety in the coal industry, but that was all based on my mining engineering qualifications, as distinct from safety qualifications. So that was a big help.
So it's safe to say you've got a very extensive background then in health and safety.
Yes.
I was going to say, Peter, do you want to jump in and we kind of move this over to talking about how everything that Vince has learned over those 30 years and the application of that in terms of psychological health?
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome, Vince.
Hi, Peter.
Got you onto the podcast. Actually, let's go straight to unions, Vince, because we're both union men. Why do you think the union's important in psychological health?
Well, they are there, Peter.
A secondary question is, in the course of your union work, how many times do you think we've probably dealt with psychological health as opposed to safety for our members?
Okay, Peter. Well, primarily the unions are there for the benefit, the health, safety, well-being, terms, conditions, reasonable workplaces, etc., for the members. I would say as well that on most occasions, if I was looking up something about the practicalities of mental ill health and mental injury caused or made worse by work, my guides, my information, I would first come to the Health and Safety Executives website, and my next port of call would be my union's website. Most of the material you would get from a union website is exceptionally good, very well researched, very well put together. Through all the years of, I haven't actually done that many personal cases. I've been more of an activist and a kind of committee person, kind of arranging the governance of unions and things like that as a National Executive Committee member. But I would say, I don't have the figures from my particular union now, but I would say mental ill health and mental injury caused or made worse by work, let's say claims that the union take on behalf of their members versus safety incidents where someone's been physically injured or made ill, let's say asbestos diseases and things like that. I think that the ratio is tiny. Maybe, I'm just guessing a figure off there, but I would suspect it's something like 1 in 100, 1 in 50 maybe.
Yeah.
It's nothing, the two comparisons. If that's what you're looking for, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do a lot of personal casework, so I obviously see the bulk of my cases.
Yes,
will be around psychological injury, or in dealing with people who require support after cases of work-related stress, which I think really brings us nicely, and we'll come back to the unions later. But 45,001 and 45,003. Why do we need 45,003?
Well, I think it will be helpful if it's done properly. If it's applied by people who've got the competence, the experience, and all the background to do it properly. I've said on several occasions it could be a game changer. In getting your work people performing well. I think the word we use these days is flourishing. To get to work now. Within there, if we don't get it right, and I'm scared that we are wandering towards not getting it quite right. If you listen to the likes of Dominic Cooper, Dr. Dominic Cooper, and people like him, there's a big worry around getting it right. But if you get it right, I think the outcome for both physical safety and kind of mental ill health caused by work or being mentally healthy from your work is about having safe and healthy work, safe and healthy workers, a safe and healthy workplace, safe and healthy work assets, and safe and healthy work output, the products and services offered or given by the organisation that's doing it. If we achieve those 5 basics of health and safety, my reasonable expectation would be, and I think the profession's expectation would be, is the cause of mental ill health and injury caused by work has to reduce. If you've got the rest of them 5 basics in place, yes, and that includes physical and mental health, I would say there is definitely a place for some significant improvement, in output, in profitability, in reduced costs, and just in the general well-being and happiness and pleasantness of people being able to get to their work. So people could flourish at work instead of being destroyed by work. Unfortunately, I think, looking kind of at a macro global type of level, what we are trying to achieve here might get initially to 1% of the global workforce, maybe as the kind of years and decades go by, maybe 3% of the global workforce. The rest of them, it's not a good picture around the world. So for me, anything that can make any kind of an inroad or a positive difference is probably worthwhile pursuing. So I've been through the 45,003 standard. I wouldn't particularly class myself as an expert on it yet. I'm not a psychologist. So I'm a safety and health practitioner, but the general principles of it, and I've kind of added two things. So there's three main items. I think it's in clause 6 about planning. About your safe and healthy work, the relationships of people at work, and a safe and healthy workplace are the three headlines. I've kind of just enhanced that a little bit and mentioned them 5 basics: work, workers, workplace, work assets, and the work output. If you can get them safe and healthy, I think we're on a good way. And the basis of ISO 45001 and 3 is for the employer and the employees to achieve those ends.
If Vince, if we were to replace the word safety with health in your 5 principles, would they still apply?
Sorry, Pete, repeat.
So you got your 5 safety principles that you just replace the word safety with health, and do you think they're still the same? I mean, I have my opinion.
I did say it: safe and healthy workplace, safe and healthy workers. So the health part of health and safety, I think, has always been the poor neighbour. And just looking at your figures, Peter, from the HSE for 2020, we would be looking at the ratio between people who lose their lives because of a work accident versus people who lose their lives because of a work-caused illness, asbestos, silicosis, and various other things. The ratio, Peter, is 1 to 117. It's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. Yeah. And we've just found out from the British Occupational Hygiene Society, we have around 2.2 million construction workers in the UK likely to have been affected by silica dust since the introduction of disc cutters and things into construction in the mid-1990s. After the cost regulations were enacted, how have we managed that? In the world, how have we managed that? And then the mental ill health caused or made worse by work. I think some of the figures you've been quoting, Peter, we've got 817,000 people are recorded now who've had to take time off work, recorded as a mental illness caused or made worse by work. The sick days allocated and recorded against mental ill health, somewhere up towards just under 18 million.
17.8 million days lost.
Okay, just rounded up. Nearly a million sufferers, according to the medical records and things, and 18 million days off work. Something isn't right here.
Yeah. And do you think that's why maybe 45,003, in line with sort of national approaches, so the management standards being the one that we have in the UK, the Canadian standards in Canada. So do you think 45,003 has something to offer?
Yes, I do. I did a podcast yesterday with Barbara, and I think through this latest lockdown and previous to that, I think I've probably looked at 50, maybe 48, maybe 52 sessions with highly qualified, highly experienced organizational psychology people, of which 31 psych health and safety podcasts now. So I've seen every one of them. I watched some of them 2 and 3 times to get my brain around, because it's not what my expertise is. But when you look at the 3 tables in clause 6 planning, about the work itself, the work content, how safe and how healthy it is, the relationships with people at work, toxic relationships, pleasant relationships, bullying relationships, and things like that. And then a safe workplace, the machinery and noise and lighting and shift work and things like that. All those things. So if the organizations who go at ISO 45003 utilize it properly and properly involve the people who work inside the organization, be they union or non-union workplaces, but properly involve the people, and then get to the heart of the matter, really get into the depth of it, and then make changes based on that, there's a reasonable chance the outcome would be positive for everybody. That is how I read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it gives a framework, does it, Vince?
Yes. Yeah. A good framework. So one of the little pieces of work I did some years ago now, I believe I wrote the first 45,001 conforming standard anywhere around the world. Somebody might come along and say, no, we were there first. But as far as I was aware, I think mine was what I did, a piece of work for a client, was the first one written as a complete piece of work anywhere. And that's had some big changes in the organisation to kind of really look at the risk, what they're doing, rather than the perceived risk, the actual risk, and then dealing with those actual risks and making business improvements out of them. If we could kind of transfer the same thing into ISO 45003, yes, it's got something to offer. What scares me, though, Peter, the reason I've invested so much time watching expert people and listening to expert people, around 50 of them now, about ISO 45003 and about psychological, and mental illness caused or made worse by work, is around the treating the symptom rather than eliminating the cause. So if we use 45003 properly, we will actually start to get to the cause of problems and deal with them and eliminate them, rather than trying to fix the symptoms later. Wider in society, we've got poverty, loss of rights, unstable housing, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, discrimination, economic equality, racism, trauma, loss of the welfare state. All those things are on top of what we're trying to do at work. And for probably 40 years now, in most workplaces, in most places in the world, the people who produce the work, we've only ever taken from them. Yes? Yeah. Today, there might be one or two, but the masses of working people, how many people today have got a better pension than what they did 40 years ago? How many people today have got better terms and conditions, better holidays, better sick pay and things like that? Yes? So you've got to manage all those type of things. So what we can't have happen, in my view, is we are going to do something particularly awful to you. We are going to close part of the plant down. We are going to make people redundant. We're going to cheaply transfer. Somebody's made a leveraged buyout of the company and put us into a lot of debt. So because all those things happen, you lot have to take a pay cut or a reduction in hours, or we're taking your pension away from you. And then at the same time, we put this mental health process in place. So you've destroyed me on one hand, but want me to be all jolly and happy on another hand. And it kind of doesn't quite rub up, Peter. So what I'm trying to get my brain around is, and the type of questions I'm posing on LinkedIn to people I'm engaging with is, how do you do this? How do you do something particularly awful to a working person and then apply some mental health fix or band-aid onto it? It's destructive. So what we can't have, in my opinion, is the use of the mental health repairs and the mental health band-aids, the mental health first aid phenomenon, what's going on now. An excellent idea, but are we trying to use something like that instead of doing all the fundamental, eliminating the causes of mental ill health, as distinct from trying to fix the symptoms, if that makes sense? That was quite a long answer, but...
Well, no, I mean, in essence, it's what we would call the primary, secondary and tertiary approach, isn't it? So yeah, primary being that, you're impactful at the organisation, but what changes can you make at an organisational level to support your people, and that includes going through redundancies and recession, etc.
Yeah.
You know, if a redundancy is going to happen in an organisation, there are ways that you can do it, which can be done in a more sensitive way, where you help people. You know, and some progressive organisations offer training before they're going to happen in other other areas. So I guess the reality is, to reduce people's mental ill health in such as in those situations, there are things you can do. But you know, as we just said, it's that primary stuff. What are you doing at an organisational level? Because mental health first aid, the provision of any range of other activities mostly sit at the individual, and we know that that's sort of not effective when you don't do the organisational bit. I mean, certainly as trade union reps, and you know, you as a trade union, your challenge, I guess, at a convener level was to tell the organisation how to do it better. Correct?
Yeah. So I was a union safety rep for many years in the mines, and I'm the safety rep, health and safety rep now for Prospect in the southeast region. I don't get called on a great deal now, because most of the members are working in ones and twos like me at home. So if you've got a problem with your home, then it's probably something you could be dealing with if you're self-employed. But I think as well, Peter, some of the information that you shared a lot on these is probably worth mentioning. When the stress management standards first came in, that I believe you were responsible with colleagues for, starting, writing, developing, and implementing. The initial take-up of them through the kind of mid to late 2000s reduced work days lost allocated to mental illnesses by 25% or more, from something like 12 million down to nearly 9.
Correct. Yep.
And the massive emphasis there was on organizational health and organizational safety and safe work and safe people and safe workplaces and healthy workplaces. And there was a drift over towards the responsibility being the individuals.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Through.
There always has been, isn't there, Vince? If we look back through the course of history in the early 90s, what were we teaching people to do? Teaching them to cope and.
Yes. Yeah. And then it's kind of doubled almost over them next 10 years. What seems like is coming across is we the organisation are going to put these generally tertiary interventions in place. So the damage has been done. People are suffering. People may need time away from work. And I believe that the measurement of time away from work for mental injuries and mental illnesses is a lot longer than physical injuries. So somebody could be off work for a few weeks with a broken major bone, but off for months with a mental illness, which is not good. But the tertiary side seems to be, we've put these things in place. We've got, maybe an employee assistance program. We've got the other really nice to have pleasant things. We talk about yoga and the free fruit bowl and the app on your phone, your wellness app and things like that. And they're all great. Don't get me wrong. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. The mental health first aid support and the rest of it. So we've put all these things in place, and you still fell over. So that's got to be your fault. That's down to you. That's your problem. You're not resilient enough. And I've got a difficulty with that. So I would go back to, have we got safe and healthy work, safe and healthy workers, a safe and healthy workplace, safe and healthy work assets, and safe and healthy work output, the products and services offered? Yeah. If you've got them right, yes, you probably don't get the problem what you get later. That's kind of how I come from this. And safe and healthy includes people's mental well-being and mental health and flourishing at work. Yeah, okay, that might be a bit of a utopian place to get to, but why not try and get there?
Yeah, because I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that, Vince, because one of the questions we're going to ask was about, what is psychological safety and health? Effectively, is it different, or is it similar, or is it the same? What do you think? Do you think we should differentiate the two, or just one impact on the other?
Absolutely. Yes, the answer is yes. The impact on one another, and if you don't get it right with those 5 health and safety basics, again, my view, then people will suffer physical injuries and mental injuries as a result of those 5 basic things not being right. Mm-hmm. Once people start to suffer mental injuries, then there has to be, I guess, and I'm sure we could do some scholarly research and look at this, a downward spiral all the way. So the mental, problems and people not being fixated on the job, or, losing their concentration and things like that. Mind not being on the job, mind being on other things. Then your concentration, you get your hand in the wrong place, or you're standing in the wrong place as the fork truck comes through, or you are aggressive towards a customer if you're in a customer services activity, and the whole thing's a downward spiral. So one will make the next worse, will make the next worse, will make the next worse. And I could see this if the organisation doesn't get a grip of it, being terminal. This could close organisations down, because, of course, then the enforcement authorities, need to start having a look. What's going on here? Why is this happening? The governance, reputational damage and things like that. We need people to be flourishing at work, output and happy to go. Even though the first 20 years of my work life, Peter, were horrible in the scheme of things. I mean, it was dreadful. To go underground every day into the mine and scratch around on my elbows, my belly, my knees, mud and corruption, dragging people off every other day with legs missing. It really was that bad. It was awful. Yeah. But you know what? I enjoyed it. Yes. Yeah. The crack and the camaraderie and the rest was when people think, well, you must be mad to think that. But I'm really, really lucky in my life. I've always enjoyed going to my work.
So there's almost like there was a psychological benefit from being in that environment.
Yes. Yes. I mean, we kind of thrived off it. That thriving might have been destructive at the end of the day. I'm not sure. We had the minor strikes and all the difficulty, and life was never the same after that. Yeah. There was still some, kind of enjoyment to be had at work, but it was a seismic shift at the other side of the miners' strike. It was a kind of a life and country changing episode in our history. If anybody wanted to look it up, but I've always enjoyed going to work, and kind of my aspiration now would be wouldn't it be great for to try to cause things to happen for everybody to enjoy that in their lives? Yes. Yeah. So God, I've got to get to work, and you've got this lovely butterfly feeling in your belly. Oh, what we do different today? How can we enjoy ourselves? How can I do things a little bit better? To get to that place, what a wonderful place to get to.
Absolutely, but I guess that butterfly feeling helps when you're dropping 1,000 feet down into the core.
Yeah. Yes. Actually, 2,250, Peter.
Oh, yeah.
It was a long way down, let me tell you.
With a group of 50 of you in a very small, tight little cage.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it wouldn't have worked with COVID these days, let me tell you.
It wouldn't be a COVID-safe environment.
I've got a question for both of you then, guys.
Okay.
All of the tertiary types of interventions that we've talked about, MHFA, EAP, they've generally been initiatives that have come out of HR functions, haven't they, in terms of supporting it? Because historically, psychological health and safety hasn't been viewed as health and safety. And I think, Pete, I'm right in saying that that's one of the reasons it was brought in on the occupational health standard. Yeah.
Well, I think, I mean, ISO sort of recognised that, it sits within the domain of the safety as well as HR. And I think Vince would agree with us there that, it's a division of loyalty, I think, of where it is.
So 2 questions for you. One is on the basis that now there is this shift and it's coming under psychological health and safety. Question 1 is, how can health and safety kind of get hold of that and really push that forward on the agenda within an organisation? And the second question is, how switched on are health and safety professionals generally to the standard and the impact that they can have on psychological health and safety?
Mm-hmm.
You go first, Vince.
Okay. Occupational health and safety, working with operations, working with governance, and working with HR. I think, and working people. This is a team effort. In respect to occupational health and safety people understanding this, I've watched hundreds of hours of psych health and safety at work material from the best experts in the world. And I think I've got maybe, 3% of what we need to know. So I'm fairly well qualified, pretty well experienced, seen and done quite a bit, and generally been successful at it. Right now, I wouldn't be that confident or comfortable about taking on an organizational kind of occupational and mental health activity unless I had the use of somebody who was qualified to help me. An organizational psychologist or somebody with Peter's background. If you brought a specialist engineer in, if you were a safety person, to help design some guards on a machine, let's say, for physical safety, or an occupational hygienist to take some dust or toxin measurements in the workplace, I would then be looking at asking for some assistance from an expert in that field. So help us to get the basis and help us to get the skeleton put in place. Come back occasionally to monitor and watch that we are doing how you're supposed to do this properly, according to the history, according to the legislation, according to best practices, and make some adjustments and things like that. So on that basis, I think the occupational health and safety profession should be very comfortable. Mm-hmm. What I'm concerned about a little is that once ISO 45003 hits the streets, I believe June 2021.
Yes, this June.
Yeah. There could be potentially, tens of billions of dollar, pound, euro, yen business created at the drop of a hat when that hits the streets. That could be the outcome. Where are all of the skilled expert people to provide the support to business, industry and commerce in order to get 45,001 and its principles put in place properly? So I'm a little reticent about that. I don't think we've got the volume of skilled, expert, competent people to support, the world of work to do this properly. And I'm scared about or worried about from the way the narrative is going. We only get to tertiary interventions rather than primary and secondary ones, because there's not enough skilled people going about. Does that answer your question? Yeah,
that's in the area of 45,003, isn't it? I know we 45,001 is accredited, and it's a fine sort of standard. So, and if you're using 45,001, therefore you should be familiar with the terminology that's in 45,003.
Yes.
I definitely think that. the principle of 45,003 was designed so actually health and safety professionals could take it and begin to apply it. It gives you a skeleton outline of what you need to do to manage mental, psychological health in the workplace. And yes, there may be times and opportunities where you require a specialist, but ultimately, I believe what we're trying to get to is a position where this becomes normal, as if you were to put a guarding on a machine.
Yeah.
Principles that are established in 45,001 should become normal with regards to 45,003, which is, manage the risk, manage the hazards, and give your people the competency to and confidence to deal with that. And if as you're saying, that will take time, but I think we will hopefully see over the course of the next 5 to 10 years a sea change in how people potentially look at this here, or they do what they're doing at the moment and go back to defaulting to the individual, which will only lead you to one area. And we know this because when we were teaching people to cope in the 90s, our numbers were going up, and when we teach people to cope, and I do say it, we are giving people coping strategies when we're doing the tertiary interventions or the individual interventions, that we still a peripheral. It's a great word, isn't it? of initiatives, is it's still very much focused about the individual. Now, as I've tracked it throughout the last 20 years, when we start going to the individual, we start seeing an increase. We're not addressing the primary factors.
And again, I think with, picking up on the part that you were saying about experts, Vince, one of the key elements of the 45003 is consultation with work. If the workers in the workplace doing the work are not consulted, they are the experts. 9 times
of course,
will know that solution, won't they, for how they want that safe work to be designed, so the least amount of stress as well. So I think
just kind of some thoughts about the OC health and safety profession taking on both of them activities, and there is some education and understanding needed. That needs adding into the NEBOSH programs, the NVQ programs, the NEBOSH diploma programs, on to elevate the level of organizational psychology and mental health and mental illness caused or made by worse by work. There needs to be some additional education. Let me just try and explain what I mean by that. So in your OC health and safety role, you can see the person is hanging and leaning off the untied ladder. You can see the guardrail is missing. You can see the person's operating the machine with no guard on it. You can see the person is decanting the chemicals, not in the fume cupboard. You can see bottle lids are left off. You can see there's been a spillage and that's given off a fume or something. You can see there's a burst on a pipe. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
If we take on the mental health issue and psychosocial safety issue within the safety profession, and that's where I hope this is going, with a bit of support I'm on about. When the HR team and the board of directors are talking about cutting the workforce, that'll all be done in secret. You don't see that. Somebody's doing a bit of bullying. Somebody's been racist. Somebody's been sexist. That's not that obvious. So does that make sense?
No, absolutely.
So most of the things that we deal with, I'll not say they are obvious, but you've got to go looking for things and seeking things, and that's why we audit and inspect and check and speak to people, do all that good monitoring type of stuff to uncover, my word, there's a problem here. But generally speaking, there's something to see. In respect to organizational and psychosocial health and safety at work, there's some education to do, and that's the basis of we need a bit of a hand by the experts to help to get started. then it'll become part of the job. We've got a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, then 5, 8 years and 10 years. And then we run with this and do this. But right now at this minute, with ISO 45003 hitting the street, if there was an enormous take up for it, I think the world, the UK, Europe, etc., is short of the skills to actually do the actions, deeds, behaviours, and put things in place to cause those changes and differences to be made so people can flourish.
Excellent. Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. It absolutely does. So I just want to we're going to close off now, because we try to keep our podcast to a 40-minute slot, at 45 minutes. So final question really, Vince, is what would be your advice to business leaders and health and safety professionals on this subject of psychological health, the kind of, the takeaway, the food for thought that they really need to have at the front of their minds on this subject?
Okay, so I would look at the things which are causing harm, and they are well documented now. Losing control, they're all in the management standards. Or if you want to look at the Canadian standards, if you would look at ISO 45001, get the advice of some experts, as we've alluded to, and then put in place the primary and secondary processes, activities, people, skills, abilities, monitoring, and make sure that's working, and then move over to the tertiary kind of intervention standards. But remember, when we use the mental health first aider, something's gone horribly wrong. And how many opportunities has there been, primary and secondary, to not get to the place? So we don't take a guard off a machine and chop people's fingers off and then put a bandage on the finger at the end of it with a first aid. I know you do something about the machine. So the safe and healthy worker, workplace, work assets and work output, look at them in the context of what are we doing that is harming people's mental health, and then deal with that. And do the best you can by talking to the people, as we've alluded to several times on the call, and they are the experts, like you say, and then put things in place at a primary level to eliminate the causes. Don't wait until the damage is done and start trying to, kind of fix the symptoms or treat the symptoms. It could be terminal for an organisation, and you are going nowhere very fast other than down.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you, Vince, and thanks for your time this morning.
Okay.
Peter, anything to close off on?
Thanks for asking.
No, I thought that was brilliant, Vince. Thank you very much. Always fun to talk to you. And
okay, Peter, thanks. Yeah.